Your actions speak louder than your words. I'm sure that most of you here today have heard that phrase at least once in your lives. It was something I would hear often as a young girl, and each time I would think something along the lines of, "That can't be right. There is no way that you can communicate with people without using words." I never fully understood those words, or put much thought into understanding them, until a few years ago. Hearing that phrase today holds a whole new meaning, and little me never would have known that they would be the 7 words that grew to become my Year 12 project. At the end of 2021, my family suffered the loss of my uncle. His passing was not sudden, but the impact it had on my family was immense. Personally, the hardest part for me was not knowing how to comfort my family, as I struggled to find the words to express what I wanted to say. As a result, I often ended up saying nothing, which felt wrong because I was unable to express how much I truly cared. What I wish I had known sooner is that I did not need to weave together a perfect collection of words to make it all better, because words do not hold that much power. Instead, I could have turned to my actions to speak for me. Have you ever found yourself lost for words? An extremely common phrase amongst those with a peer who is experiencing grief is, "I don't know what to say to them," or "I don't want to say the wrong thing." Society has lost a lot of its capacity to deal with and openly discuss grief and tragedy. It often feels uncomfortable, vulnerable, and for some, it is uncharted territory. When confronted with tragedy, many people find themselves frozen, unsure what to do or say to the person, and will often end up doing nothing at all. This is the same experience I had after my uncle passed away. I was afraid of doing or saying the wrong thing and making it worse for my family. From what I discovered through my project this year, as long as you have good intentions, there is little you could do or say that could make things worse for someone experiencing tragedy than it already is. Anything you do to show your care and to show someone that you are there for them if they need can make a difference in that person's life. More of a difference than we can comprehend. For anyone who may be at a loss for words in trying to comfort a grieving friend or loved one, showing your care through your actions is an effective alternative, because it is so important that more than anything, they know that you are there for them if they need. With what I now know of the power of your actions to speak for you when the right words feel hard to find, there are things I would have done differently after the passing of my uncle. Drawing on this knowledge, I could have felt that I was making a difference in my family's experience, as well as used my actions in a positive way to help lighten their loads. Even if that looked like cooking dinner one night, doing an extra load of laundry, or bringing home a fresh bunch of flowers to brighten up the space. With this understanding now of what I would have done differently, I want to offer the knowledge to a wider community that actions can have just as significant of an impact as words can. While it was that experience that sparked hundreds of ideas and questions inside of me, it was a book that began to propose some answers to those questions. In 2021, I read The Lost Flowers of Alice Hart, a book by Holly Ringland. It is the story of a young girl, Alice, who loses her voice after the traumatic experience of losing both her parents and unborn brother in a fire. She can no longer find it inside of herself to use words to speak after such an unspeakable thing happens to her. Instead, she turns to the flowers to speak for her. This was the first time I had really connected flowers and communication together, and I began to think about how relevant this was to me in the sense of turning to alternative modes of communication when words fail us. This is how I discovered the concept and practice of florography. Florography is the language of flowers. It is the hidden meanings and symbolisms of each unique stem, leaf, and petal that compose the thousands of different flowers we see today. I began to think about how I could apply this practice to my own life and experience with struggling for words. What if I was able to use this language of flowers to express the words I had left unsaid after my uncle's passing? A poppy for remembrance, an everlasting to say that my love will not leave you, and a chamomile for may you find rest. What if I could demonstrate to myself and others that words are not the only means of expression, and that your actions can hold just as much, if not more, power? And from that day onwards was when I knew that I wanted to learn how to use flowers as both an action and mode of communication to express that tricky chapter in my family story. And since that idea first came to me in 2021, it remained the core of what I wanted to do through this project. But why flowers? Why not use drawing or painting to portray my story? The Lost Flowers of Alice Hart helped me to make that connection between flowers and communication, but my affinity for flowers goes back further than this. I can vividly remember being in my grandparents' garden as a child and seeing geraniums, pansies, and all different kinds of flowers around their yard. I come from a long line of farmers on both sides of my family, and growing up constantly exposed to nature and the outdoors allowed me to see a beauty in the natural world beyond just appearance. I have come to believe that I feel most connected to my family when I spend time in nature and in the garden. I am sure to dedicate time each week to tend to the flowers that I've begun to grow at home. But the strongest reason that I can think of as to why I felt such a connection to flowers in choosing this project is not a memory or a book. It's a feeling. Scientists call it the flow state, and I like to think of it as being completely in awe of and focused on the task in front of me. When I am surrounded by flowers, I feel relaxed, creative, and present. A lot of thought goes into arranging flowers. Every stem is required to be cut to different lengths, and every flower placement needs careful consideration to create an appealing design. Working with flowers activates my state of flow most completely. Learning the craft of floristry in a practical sense was a significant and time-consuming part of my project, but it was definitely one of my favourites. This aspect involved research into techniques, methods, and design principles, as well as the actual making of the flower arrangements. At the beginning of the year, I spent a lot of time trying to find a suitable in-person workshop or course that I could attend to learn the basics of floristry and build my skills. This did not end up being successful, but with the guidance of my mentor Rosie, I learnt that I did not need to attend any special courses or certifications to be able to try my hand at floristry. Floristry is an art form, and like any other type of art, is extremely subjective in terms of success or beauty of a piece. So, I was able to learn the art of floristry through Rosie and my own explorations. My personal style of floristry was something I had to spend a lot of time learning and perfecting through an action research model, where I would research and plan a new arrangement style or technique, attempt it, and then reflect on the finished product. I shared a lot of my practical floristry progress on my Instagram page. I loved the experience of working with flowers, as I suspected I would. I found it relaxing yet creatively stimulating at the same time. I would have rushes of motivation and inspiration for new arrangements and would always be on the lookout for new flowers to play with. Throughout the experience of applying concepts of floriography to my own floristry practice, specifically in the creation of my final arrangement, I found the process of interweaving flower meanings into the arrangement very cathartic. It allowed me space to think about what it was I wanted to express. And my aim was to create an arrangement dedicated to my late uncle. I chose specific flowers based on their meanings for this arrangement. The flowers I chose were white anemones, stock, poppies, rocket flowers, and ranunculus, which all have various meanings that contributed to the story I was telling. Using existing meanings of floriography combined with my own interpretations, I translate this arrangement to say, to Brett, Poppy, we will never forget you. You will remain in our hearts, and our love will not leave you. Anemone, we could not protect you from all evils, and for that we are sorry. Rocket flower, grief is deceitful. One day you will feel strong, and the pain feels manageable. But the next you feel it is once again too strong. Ranunculus, you are so loved, and grief is the price we pay for love. Stop. We are sorry that you had to leave this earth so soon. But all we want now is for you to find the peace and contentment you deserve from our family. Attempting to represent this chapter of my family story in a visual way enabled me to view it from a more objective, observational perspective. It offered me time to further process the passing of my uncle on my own terms and finish the piece with a slightly more positive and accepting perspective, which was perhaps another advantage of the flow state that I was able to access through the medium of flowers. When I sat back and realised how far I had come since the beginning of the year, both internally and practically, I was able to see not only the full capacity of flowers as vessels for communication and self-expression, but I also recognized the positive impact that it had on my well-being. Random acts of kindness was another significant aspect that I explored through my project this year. I was inspired to take this route so that I could apply my existing knowledge of the power of your actions outside of a context of grief and tragedy and into a context of daily life. Through my research, I discovered that a significant part of the reason why people don't practice kindness religiously is because of a fear of rejection. It is vulnerable to be kind, to put yourself out there with your actions, with no idea how the recipient may react. This fear of rejection, whether subconscious or conscious, plays a significant role in the reason why people aren't as kind as they could be. I thought to myself, what if we could take away some of this resistance towards kindness? How could that be possible? I believe that education is part of this equation. If people knew the science and evidence behind the impacts of random acts of kindness, perhaps I could be a part of taking away some of that resistance. With this goal in mind, I started a blog where I plan to share information around the evidence behind random acts of kindness. It was my hope that people would read one of the articles I had uploaded and be inspired to carry out an act of kindness to someone in their life. I knew that this approach would not solve all issues around resistance to kindness, but it could be a significant step. I hoped that the knowledge I shared would inspire readers with a sense of purpose and mutual benefit, as well as to model different approaches to kindness to make the doing as simple and straightforward as possible. From July to September, I ran a floristry challenge through my blog and Instagram pages, encouraging people to follow the tutorial I had created on how to make a posy jar from home. They were also asked to then gift their creation to a loved one as a random act of kindness. I had over 25 participants send me photos of what they had created, and I sent a follow-up survey to some of those people. The responses collected in the survey suggested that respondents experienced a noticeable positive shift in mood. The arranging itself made them feel relaxed, focused, and creative. This change in mood that participants described was likely due to the fact that working with the flowers engaged multiple of their senses at once, creating this sense of relaxation, creativity, and presence. The flowers could have also triggered the release of the feel-good chemicals known as oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine into the participant's brain, as some scientists have suggested they can, giving them these positive shifts in mood. It was amazing to hear first-hand accounts of how flowers can be used to improve well-being. I was then able to make the connection between my experience of the flow state when I work with flowers and flowers' capacity to enhance well-being. My biggest challenge throughout this project would have to be struggling with self-doubt and confidence. For as long as I can remember, I've had a voice in the back of my mind telling me that I am not good enough and that I can't do this. This is something that has impacted me through this project this year, through other schoolwork, and as well as in my personal life. In the context of choosing a community aspect, this voice was telling me that people will not want to learn from me and that I will not be able to make a worthy impact on their lives. To overcome this procrastination that stemmed from these feelings of self-doubt, I had to shut out the negative thoughts inside my head and replace them with more positive, uplifting thoughts. And I was able to do so through strategies like journaling, planning ahead, and talking things through with friends and family. In June, an opportunity arose for me to run a floristry workshop at a local aged care home in Mount Barker with some of its residents. The interactions I had with one of the participants in particular was one of the most significant and eye-opening encounters of my whole project, because it offered me first-hand experience of how flowers can be used to communicate. After several attempts to speak with her, I discovered that she could not understand the words I was saying to her. One of the carers then informed me that she suffered from both dementia and almost complete deafness. Language immediately became a barrier between us, and I was unsure how I was going to run the workshop without being able to use words to teach. So, I turned to the flowers to communicate with her. I held a bright red poppy up, to which she immediately smiled in response. She then took the flower from me, held it up to her nose, and screwed up her face as if to say the flower smelled bad, which I assure you it did not. The fact that she was able and willing to make jokes with me about the flowers was already a positive outcome in my perspective. The voice in my head that was usually telling me that I couldn't make an impact instantly shifted and was surprisingly telling me the opposite, that I could and would make an impact. Although we were not communicating through floriography specifically, we were still interacting with one another without the use of words, and instead used the flowers to communicate. This experience felt unreal at first, as I couldn't believe that this interaction was so heartwarming and real, yet so relevant to the research I was doing for my project. I was so grateful for that experience. As I stand here with you at the end of my project, I can see that it has had three main parts to it. They include the power of your actions, alternative modes of communication, in this instance, flowers, and random acts of kindness. Each is a theme that could stand alone, but I think that the way all three interact with one another offers an opportunity for uniquely deep understanding. Your actions are a powerful way to show someone you care, and are able to do so perhaps more effectively than words. Actions, or random acts of kindness, can be used to communicate to a loved one when words may feel too tricky or uncomfortable. The gift of flowers offers a unique opportunity as both emotive communication through principles of floriography, as well as a random act of kindness through their gifting, not to mention their well-being enhancing ability. It is for these reasons that I chose to use flowers as my primary example of how flowers and communication interact through this project. The biggest lesson that I learned about myself this year, aside from my project's main themes, is how I can approach feelings of self-doubt in the future. Although I was able to face a lot of it this year, that does not mean that it's gone forever. In fact, I still feel it today, right now even. But through this project, I've learnt and developed tools that can help me manage these feelings of self-doubt. These tools include noticing those thoughts, those negative thoughts that aren't necessarily true or helpful, and replacing them with more positive thoughts of encouragement that can help to uplift my confidence instead of diminishing it. Also, talking things through with friends and family is extremely beneficial for me, as it allows me to gain perspective and recognize those thoughts that aren't true or helpful. But also, I've learned that it's okay to experience self-doubt sometimes. We all do. You just can't let that self-doubt control you and stop you from doing important things. I have control over my thoughts and how negative or positive they are. They do not have control over me. Jane Austen once said, "It is not what we think or feel that makes us who we are. It is what we do or fail to do." Your actions hold so much power and have the potential to impact people's lives in ways that you could not even begin to imagine. Never let a struggle for words stop you from showing someone just how much you care. And when you next find yourself or someone you love confronted with grief, loss, or tragedy, these things happen around us every day. It is my hope that you can recall and draw on what I have spoken about today. Your actions have the power to create positive change in the lives of those around you. All you have to do is do. Thank you. Are there any questions? Up there.
Thank you very much for that beautiful talk. And it was really moving, I'm sure. For other people in the audience, it was certainly moving for me.
Thank you.
I have a very simple question. Where did you get all of those amazing flowers in all of those beautiful images?
Oh, all over the place. It was quite a lot. The farmers market was really good. Every Saturday, that was a reliable source of flowers, and it was also really good to support local growers. I reached out to a few growers around the area. I heard back from a few who were happy to help at a lower price when I explained what I was doing for my project. Sometimes if I had to, I would buy from supermarkets, which I didn't love because it's a lot of imported flowers. But yeah, all over the place really. Oh, gardens as well. Friends and family were more than happy to help with cutting a few of their flowers for me. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, well done, Alexa.
Thank
Very moving, as we've heard, very moving presentation, exposure of yourself. Just wondering the depth of this, does that have any influence, or has that shaped any thoughts that you have for after school, your future?
Well, I've always had I don't emotions are very, I feel like I am able to be aware of them quite well. And that was a big part of my project, vulnerability and things like that. Talking about things that are harder to talk about, I guess. But no, I haven't really thought about it for my future, I guess. But that's an interesting thing to think about. It's quite a lot, this, to talk about stuff that is a bit harder, quite emotionally hard, but yeah,
Well, you've certainly got a skill because I think you've moved everyone here in this room tonight.
thank you.
Hi, Alexa. Well done. That was amazing. Is there a future in floristry for you?
Yes, I think so. I would like to continue doing it as something alongside study. As I'd love to get a job at a florist. Yeah, hopefully this project helped me build my skill set, so a bit more hireable. Yeah, it's something I definitely want to do a bit more of, so thanks.
Hi, Alexa. In your understanding of florography, what was the most surprising thing that you learned about the flowers and their meanings?
Probably just that there is a meaning for every flower. I've found that quite, because there are so many flowers, but there's also so many different ways to interpret flowers. I think that's one of the most interesting parts of it, is that I'll look at a flower and see one meaning, but you might look at it and see it differently. But that is okay, because it's really about how it makes you feel. And what I wanted to do is come up with a few so people could start dabbling in it, I guess, as another way to express yourself. But I think once people get more familiar with it, then it could be something that you start to come up with your own interpretations of. I think that's what I found most interesting.
Hey Alexa, that was amazing.
Thank you.
I felt like I was close to tears. Sorry, got a little bit weepy and emotional listening to you too. There seems to be a lot of themes coming up around, finding words for those things that we can't speak, and it seems that you have a sensitivity to that, just and who you are. I'm getting emotional speaking now. Yeah, and did you give any thought to sort of like taboos in our culture, where in some ways, because we don't have words for things, it's hard to express them. So that's what came across for me listening to your talk, is like you were trying to find words for what we don't have words for.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't really look into it, but there are a lot of things that are hard to put into words. I think that's why I found it so uncomfortable. But I think that's when you can turn to these other ways of expressing hard things. Because, words aren't the only way to express or describe something. And I think that's what I wanted to show myself and other people. But yeah, I think there are plenty of things that we don't have the right words for, but I think we can turn to other things to make up for that.
Thank you too for the beautiful speech. I was very moved. Two questions. You would have had lots of posies and flower arrangements throughout the year in the house. Did your family say that they felt that the house was a lot nicer and they felt more uplifted? Question one.
Ooh, I'm getting some nods.
Question two, would you work in the garden to get to be part of the planting of flowers, so you can continue making beautiful, uplifting flower arrangements.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I think they very much enjoyed having lots of flowers in their house. I would often get asked if they can keep them in their rooms. I said no, they're going in my room. Um, it's been a bit barren lately, I've been a bit busy, but I'd love to get back into it again. I've already started growing some of my own flowers, but it is quite time consuming. I forget to water sometimes. But next year, hopefully, I'll have a bit more time. I'd love to do that, grow my own flowers and be able to make my own arrangements, because I really admire people that do that. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, Alexa. Well
Hello.
done. That was
Thank you.
amazing and very moving, as everyone said. I just wanted to ask you, how did you go with the various seasons? Obviously, there's different flowers that are available
Yeah.
and give different feeling. Do you want to speak a little bit about that?
It was quite hard at the beginning of the year, there was a lot of flowers available. Specifically the ones I wanted to work with. Through June, winter, it was a lot harder. That was more when I focused on the theory research part of my project. So I kind of was able to plan it in a way that took into account the less flowers I'd have access to. But yeah, there was still flowers I could work with, like natives. A lot of them were available during the winter months. Like for the workshop that was in June, I used a lot more of native flowers. And yeah, but also going to supermarkets was an option because they were able to import more flowers from warmer places.
And have you looked into I'm not sure what the word is, but the flower, the ethics around getting flowers from other countries?
Sustainability?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I did
how
it.
do you feel about that?
Yeah, I did at the start of the year. I wanted to make sure I was doing it in a sustainable way. So yeah, supporting local is a significant one wherever you can. So, and also a lot of what's used in the larger arrangements is floral foam. That's generally discarded after. So another method that I didn't use floral foam, I used chicken wire, which you squish into the whatever vessel you're using. That's something you can reuse. So that was a way that I did that. I'd never really wrapped many arrangements, so didn't use any sort of plastic or anything to wrap them. Mostly just recycled jars to use. Got friends to give me jars if they could. Yeah. Okay, time. Thanks, everyone. Just want to say a few thank yous before I go. Firstly, I would like to thank Grace, my supervisor. You had your work cut out for you this year. Thank you for always having open ears and for having faith in me and my project. Thank you to my mentor, Rosie, who couldn't be here tonight, but always made time for me and any questions I had, and for introducing me into your world of floristry. Thank you to Rose and Eleanor for dedicating so much of your time this year to helping us make our projects as best as they could be. Thank you to Aaron, our class guardian, for instilling in us all the importance of having grit in everything we do. It served me well this year. And finally, I would like to thank my family. Thank you for your constant support, patience, and understanding this year. I couldn't have done it without you. And thank you for allowing me to share our story today. Thanks.
Thank you.